What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the living room, actually. So this video is going to be a little bit different. I got hit up in the DMs, I think that's how the kids say it, and some private messages about I think Reddit or Twitter post, about how people are freaking out that apparently bootlegs that are coming out of China for the PlayStation 1 are now being printed to black discs, like the actual real PlayStation CDs. Ironically, the black disc was one of the earliest steps to proving that something was a bootleg compared to the original real manufactured disc. After seeing a whole lot of unnecessary drama, I wanted to let you guys see the world through a graphic designer's perspective, and I am going to show you how you can easily spot reproductions or bootlegs, etc. A lot of this is going to be really freaking obvious, and some of it may not. So where needed, I will be interjecting and explaining things from a graphic designer perspective to help you guys understand what you're actually looking at. So if you have any questions, see me down below in the comments section. Otherwise, here we go. First and foremost, pay attention because there will be a very quick quiz at the end of the video. When it comes to shopping and bootlegs, the problem with bootlegs in general, not for the PlayStation 1, but for systems like the DS or the Nintendo or the Super Nintendo, is that they play. One of the positive things about the PlayStation is that even after 30 years, a bootleg disc cannot play natively. You're going to need either a modded system, a disc swapping device, be it like Tony Hawk's or some of the like Goldfinger GameShark ripoffs, or a debugger PlayStation, or an ROSA. If you're ever not sure, just have an unmodded system and toss the disc in and you'll know right away. Two, I know it's because I come from a printing background, but you're fine. like reproductions and bootlegs, even the ones that are professionally done, are still light years away from being next to looking like they really are the real deal. And I'll explain that as we go. First and foremost, if the game didn't exist to begin with, it's a bootleg or a repro of a prototype that got out, aka Thrill Kill or Biohazard 1.5, which is Resident Evil, unreleased version of Resident Evil 2. Fairly obvious in this case. But our first victim up to date is Silent Hill. Now, Silent Hill is a problematic release because it has two variants. It has the silver sort of glaze, for lack of a better phrase, on the top of it, where it looks super shiny. And then it has the re-released version where it's just straight up black. For reference sake, the sellers on AliExpress rightly censored all of their imagery so it doesn't say PlayStation or show the PlayStation logo. However, in referencing buyers' review images, all of that really is on there. So just assume you actually see all the logos and the PlayStation name. Anyway, in Silent Hill, it's got the black cover. This is fine. The first sign of trouble here is if you zoom in to a little bit on the back of the instruction manual. See this white, almost like powdery looking type angle of the manual? The problem with bootlegs is they don't have access to the original digital files. They don't have the artist's Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever have you files from when these games were first made. So they are taking scans of the products that are already on the market. If you're looking at a manual, or even a back insert for that matter, if you see this white powdery-like effect, that's actual manual wear on the source manual that made it into the scan for the bootleg. No one corrected it. So if you're getting the damage from the source material, you know it's not a real manual. You'd be able to tell from just rubbing against it that the texture is the same. With Silent Hill's disc artwork, it was a very, very nice gray to black, and editor Jason, remember to throw this in post. One of the first things you learn in becoming a graphic designer or even a digital artist is that everything lies to you. Your monitor lies, your scanner lies, your mobile screen lies, all of it lies. And the reason is that every device has a different RGB, red, green, blue color gamut that it is shooting out at you. When it comes to a scanner, you can scan things in different ways. Like on my scanner that I've had literally for over, I think, 12 years now, you can scan things as a document where it will basically try and make the text as crisp as possible. You can scan in what's called magazine mode, which will capture the like saturation and all the color so it looks really, really nice. The problem is that almost all scanners have a color blindness. And what I mean by that is, for example, my scanner, it will scan every color perfectly except for oranges and yellows, especially if they're neon. And you'll see that further down in this video. This scanning problem cannot be fixed in scan. It has to be fixed outside later on, like say Photoshop. As you can see in this picture of the Silent Hill disc, it should be gray, but wherever they got this scan from, it scanned in as a green and not the blackish gray. To follow up with this, monitors work in RGB, red, green, blue. When it comes to printing, you print in 4 colors, CYMK, cyan, yellow, magenta, black. If you scan something and save it, and you don't save it as a CYMK file, it's going to retain the RGB angle. So if you scan something in RGB, it means that there's no true black. So when you go to print an RGB file, your printer is going to look at it and say, hey, there's no black. I now have to try and figure out how to make black to emulate that, if you will. And this is what happens. Your blacks are no longer black. They're usually either off grays or greens. And we'll get to more of that later on. Second, and I'm moving my cursor that's not being recorded, so bear with me. See this little white circle on the edge? Under normal circumstances, if you are going to have white, you would have to actually apply the layer of white first as your base and then screen print over it. This should be a non-existent white rim. What you are looking at is the little edge of the Avery-like label that they printed to and then slapped on to the black CDR. Second, going back to the whole your blacks are not true blacks because it's an RGB image. The problem with printing a bootleg, if you don't have access to the original source materials or at least high-res scans, is that in digital on screen, the screen resolution is typically 72 dots per inch, meaning when what you're looking at, if you zoomed in, you could count the number of dots per inch and it would be 72. The minimum printing spec is 300 dpi. So an image at a screen resolution is 1/3 of the resolution it would need to be to have a very nice looking print. If you're a bootlegger and you don't have access to your own high-res scans or high-res scans from someone else that have been correctly converted to CYMK and all that good stuff, you're going to get blurry images. Look at the text on this back insert. Even in this poor photograph, you can tell that text is very blurry on a very gray background that should be black. Next up, we have Crash Bandicoot. And our second obvious ways you can tell it's a bootleg is if the deal is too good to be true. I can tell you right now, unless someone was very desperate for cash or you found a really good garage sale, you're not getting all 5 Crash Bandicoot games for $25. Guaranteed. More importantly, we come to our next trap when it comes to printing. If you guys never had Crash Team Racing has this amazing foil stamped cover where the letters C, T, R, and I think even the trophy are embossed with a metallic finish. So if you tilt the case or the instruction sheet, it'll gleam. The light will hit off of it and reflect really nicely. You can't recreate that from a scan. You have to literally have it embossed. So if you look here, you can see that when they scan the cover, the light reflecting off the foil ended up turning it super dark and making it look super bad. If we start zooming in to the manuals, here's another great problem. In this particular disc, you don't have, you kind of slowly, I shouldn't say slowly, you have just a little bit of that white rim showing that it's a label. Look at how blurry that text on that disc is. Even more important, in game art and disc art like Crash Bandicoot 2, they don't have white. The disc logo, the ESRB logo, and the Sony logo are actually the silver top of the platter shining through the artwork, like if you cut out the thing. If you're using a scan, it's going to come out as this very dirty gray. Just, it looks terrible. Two, it's a little bit cut off here, but you can, let me see if I have this. Okay, it's a little bit cut off here, but if you look at the instruction manual for Crash Bandicoot 2, they did a poor scan job, or at least a poor cutting job, because it's cut out. It's missing the N in PlayStation, and what would be, I think, the trademark or registration symbol. Two, if we look at, I think this is supposed to be Crash Bandicoot 3, if you look at the back of its manual, why would an American release have all Japanese fonts? Someone just slapped whatever artwork they could find, which is proven even more true when we go back to CTR and Crash Bash. I can tell you with 1,000% certainty, these are not the images on the back of the manuals for these two games. Going back to your RGB and CYMK, another fun thing is if the scans aren't color corrected, they're gonna be washed out, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. But as you can see here, both Crash, that blue should be a lot more blue, and the flag in the back should have a little bit more zest to it, if you will. Just zoom in here. This is what I'm talking about, and this actually happened to me when I scanned the discs in for PlayStation's for Game-Rave's website. This is the exact same problem my scanner has. The neon orange of the disc is just too much for the scanner to process, so it comes up as this very washed out, almost like dirty pink, dirty beige, just awful. Ugh. When I was researching through AliExpress and eBay, this was the first set I saw where I was like, oh, that's actually really good. The catch here is that the Black Label Metal Gear Solid has a foil cover, so that should be shiny. The Greatest Hits version did not have the shiny, so more than likely these guys probably photoshopped the Greatest Hits into the black to make sure it looked all nice and neat. However, you can already see that those blacks are not pure blacks. They look very, very gray. Another example here, you can see the white stripe from around the curve from it being a label. Look at how, like, when discs have very, I guess, detailed artwork, depending on how detailed the artwork is and what type of screening process they use to actually print it on there, when it gets scanned in, the scanner, especially at lower resolutions and what mode it was set to, it can blend everything together. So instead of getting that nice sharp green, you get sort of this ugly, like, mint color. And when you have smaller print that's roughly the same color, aka the shiny silver coming through the disc, it will literally disappear into the background, which is another great way to know that you're looking at a, bootleg. The next important angle of being a graphic designer is the term saturation. Now, saturation can refer to two things that we're talking about. One is the amount of saturation in a color will determine how bright or muted it is. And technically the Crash Bandicoot disc that was blown the hell out. Like all of its saturation was practically gone. However, in the actual physical printing process, saturation can refer to the amount of ink the printer is shooting out onto the object. Black is particularly annoying because depending on how rich and saturated the black is in an image, it can cause the printer to shoot out insane amounts of ink to register it. When we used to do FSIs at work, which is a freestanding insert, it's when you open a Sunday paper and all those ads fall out, that's an FSI. The printing company that we were working with, every so often there would be a black t-shirt that we offered. It was almost like clockwork, where they would shoot me an email and say, hey, everything's good to go except on this t-shirt in these 3 specific spots, the saturation level is too much. It will literally be like dipping the paper in water. Like it will literally weaken the strength of the paper. That's how much ink is shooting into it. Here on the Metal Gear Solid VR missions, you can see that the black around the text bubbles is so saturated from the scan that it's literally wrinkling the paper. You can see just a little itty bitty bits of how it's kind of bubbling right to the right of the picture of Gray Ninja or Gray Fox. That's another thing to look out for. If the print quality looks muddy or wet, big sign it's bad. Mrs. Game-Rave's one of her favorite games is Kudelka. Now, remember I told you about the saturation levels? Look at the blacks on this cover. There should be a building and some gray imagery surrounding these 3 faces, but it's gone. It is completely gone. More than likely, this was scanned in probably magazine style to get the brightness, but then it was never corrected on the back end. Second, if we zoom in, when you're printing like a printing press, the CYMK, each of those 4 colors are actually on their 4 separate plates. If it's old school, they still do it to a degree, but I don't know if digital printing has changed any of that. So you would have, say, your black layer, and then your yellow layer, and then your cyan layer, and then your magenta layer. And from those 4 colors, through different amounts of saturation in the dots per printed, you get that really nice sharp image on your discards and your manuals and so forth. When you're trying to print from a scan of that, because the colors have now been blended by the scanner, it reduces the sharpness. This is one of those byproducts of scanning at a non-high-res level. Look at the ghosting around the font, around the words of the will. That should be a sharp, like defining line between white and black, and instead it is just blurry. That's because of A, the resolution of the image, B, the saturation was not corrected. Pulling back out, looking at the disc artwork, again, this is another issue of saturation versus color. That disc is totally not right. Look at how much damage has been done to the outer text on this poor disc. Those are no longer words. Those are just symbols. They're basically hieroglyphics. Now to compare on the other side, this part of the scan turned out really nice. You can still read the words. But if you look closely at the E and the R in the F in performance, or the N and the C at the end of performance, the color is just bleeding in from the print because it was too saturated. Just another example on the backside of the saturation issue. I mean, look at the text on the bottom. You can't even see it. Look at that. It's terrible. All right, another fun one that I found, Bloody Roar. From the front, not bad. Looks pretty good. Except if we zoom in here, manuals, when they're inserted into a jewel case, depending on how forcefully they were shoved in, the spine of the manual can naturally wrinkle. It won't look bad, but you can see the wrinkles. Whoever scanned in this cover for their Bloody Roar, their manual had clear wear and tear that the artist did not fix when they brought it over to their printing press. Like I said, visible damage already scanned in. This killed me. This is like a culmination of everything I've shown you so far. Bloody Roar's disc should be black. It's gray from the RGB issue. The Sony logo is practically muddied out and gone. For some reason, they have the Japanese cover as the back page of the American game, which would never happen. Bloody Roar 2 has its back insert as the back page. Not happening. Nope. Not happening. Not on my watch. Jackie Chan is another fun one I found. I don't know why they blurred out his face. I would assume that would have been okay for the photos. But in this example, obviously you can see the clear of the plastic, so this was probably taken from an older photograph where they used the clear CDRs. But look at that black. That is not black. That is just a dirty ass gray. And then once we get in closer, you know it's a fake if they're using PlayStation Europe's ad on the back of the manual. It's like, come on, guys, we're not even trying. With the way grayscale, which is basically an image only having the colors white, gray, and black, or any mixture of that, with the way grayscale can be used to create the backgrounds of manuals where they want to have like a faint image of a picture or something, when that's scanned in, depending on how they did it, that can cause chaos on the scanning side. And as you can see here, poor Jackie Chan's manual just became this like old school, like, can you see the image in these dots back from the late 90s? Now, fun game, Alundra. Everyone loves Alundra. Alundra already dings our foil problem, as Working Designs absolutely loved foil stamping their games. On Alundra himself, the logo, and the 4 mirror pieces each have a different style of foil stamping. So when you tilt it, like, Alundra and the logo will be like one shade of a texture, and then the broken mirror pieces will be the other shade of the texture. You can't reproduce this in a print. It's going to come out weird. I've seen scans where, like on here, where the mirrors are dark image. I've also seen ones where the mirrors came out clear, but Alundra and the logo were just practically black. It was bad. Another example, I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen. You guys can't see this. Foil stamping on the paragraph text on the back of the insert is just destroyed. Like even on the real deal, you could barely read it. Now it's a laugh. It's just so bad. Clock Tower. This one is a really good example. With the exception of the 5 or 6 greatest hits games that Square Enix USA kept reprinting and selling directly from their website, all PlayStation games, brand new, will have, jewel case at least, will have a security strip on top with the little hologram. If someone is trying to sell you a new PlayStation game that does not have that security seal on there, it's either a reseal or bootleg. Second of all, real PlayStation games on jewel case, as far as I know, didn't come in a black tray. The other sign that this would be a bootleg is that A, it didn't come out on the PlayStation in America, and 2, they didn't bother changing the back. This is literally the Japanese artwork for the game. And last but not least, Final Fantasy. This one I found. When I first spotted this on eBay without looking at the description, I was like, wow, that's a really clean case. That's really good. And then I looked over and saw that, oh, it's a reproduction case. And upon closer inspection, you can clearly tell that the blacks are off and the PlayStation logo is just fuzzy as crap. Like, it's so bad. That is basically what you need to know when looking for bootlegs, be it in person or online. Now, to bootleggers' credits, someone in my Discord actually had a Doom jewel case variant. They asked if I could tell if it was a bootleg or not. To whoever made that particular bootleg, they scanned in, or at least had access to, insanely high-res imagery, because as a photo uploaded to Discord looking on a monitor at whatever resolution it was, it looked authentic. Like, I couldn't tell from screen to thing, except it has what I call uncanny valley problems. If you've seen it before, and the next time you see it, if there's something wrong, no matter how small, it's that uncanny valley where your brain just goes, I don't know about that. Like, there is something wrong, but I can't put my finger on it. And after we were talking about it for a little bit more, he actually opened the case and realized it was a reproduction case because the back insert was not perforated. The perforation was the scan of the real insert's perforation, and it was just bended into place in the jewel case. If the scan is that good, you have to check the little things like, is there actual perforation? Does the perforation look clean? Things like that. Another issue, which now that I think about it, I didn't have a really good example aside from that one Crash Bandicoot, is look at the imagery. A lot of times they won't, like if a scan is too small per se, they'll just stretch the image, but not naturally. They might stretch it like width-wise or stretch it horizontal-wise, so characters will look either too thin or too wide. There actually was an eBay seller about half a year ago that was selling reproduction backup discs to burn your games to, that I wanted to use as examples to show how poorly the silk-screened bootleg discs can look when they're not using labels but the actual silk screen. But mysteriously, all of his auctions are gone. So I don't know if eBay took them down or what, but that's what to look for your bootlegs. It is a lot easier than I think most people realize, especially for the fact that they just won't boot on a real system. Like, even if you have to bring a PS1 with an LCD screen and maybe a battery supply to test when you're going to swap meets and so forth, or conventions, like, it's not going to play. And until they get that figured out, which I hope they never do, you're fine. It's going to be okay. If you have any questions, guys, hit me in the comment section below. That being said, here is your quiz. I am going to show you 2 photos of Legend of Dragoon, Mrs. Game-Rave's favorite game. I want you to figure out in 5 seconds which one is the bootleg based on what I've taught you here. The answer will be shown at the end, and no cheating by pausing the video. I'll see you guys next time. Have a great one.